endlessly searching for an original sound.
Watching the sharks. Look at the mouth. These are bonnet heads.
What do you guys want to look forward to today? A little bit of my itinerary. We're going to be looking for a bunch of different types of wildlife all throughout our bay. More than likely, you guys are going to spot something up before I do. You guys just have more sets of eyes on the boat. So you guys' eyes are always constantly scanning, and I'm just up here blabbering the whole time. So to kind of help everyone be on the same page, we're going to use the boat like a face of a clock. So anything you see off the bow, straight ahead is going to be 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock off this right side or the starboard side gate, 6 o'clock off the stern behind Captain Jen, then 9 o'clock off this port side or left side gate. And then each post is 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. Just makes it a lot easier. Before I continue on with all that, just a few things to kind of add on to what Jen's already said. Underneath this aquarium table right here in the middle, in the clear bin, there's a variety of different chips that are being protected by our love bugs. Just have to go through those. And then in the cooler we have soda, water, and tea. Everything is just $1 a piece, so just help yourselves out all throughout the time. Just give your money to Chuck back in the back, and he'll take care of it in the money bag. But with that being said, we do have a recycle as well as a trash bin underneath the table as well. Just please put them into the proper bin. We want to keep our bay as beautiful as it already is. Now, is this all your guys' first time doing this trip today? Got some returners? Perfect. So as we go on, what do you guys think is going to be the main 2 marine mammals we'll hopefully get the chance to see today?
Dolphins.
Dolphins and manatees, absolutely. So our Atlantic bottlenose dolphins, we'll probably see those more often or more so than our manatees, just because we still see them about 75 to 80% of the time. They're just a larger population of our dolphins here in the bay, right at around 160 individuals. Now our manatees are pretty different because most of them spend most of their day at the bottom of the bay, on the bottom of the water. So they are either sleeping or eating. That's what they do all day. So they sleep about 8 to 12 hours in a day. And if they're not sleeping, then they're just nibbling on some seagrass. So that's all they do. They have a very rough life out here. Who doesn't want to be a manatee?
Are we sure they're not like water cats?
Sure.
Sleep and eat.
So in order to spot our dolphins, also you guys will probably see those big triangular dorsal fins coming out of the water as they go to take a breath. That's a good indicator. I'll pause right here because on channel marker 17 we do have a really good showing of an osprey. That's our second largest bird of predation right here. Now, how do you guys think we can tell the difference between a male and a female osprey?
Color?
Color? Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at the chest of the bird, if it is all white, it's going to be a male, but if it has some brown spots on her chest, it's going to be a female. So it looks like she's wearing some jewelry. So it's pretty easy to spot out. Now if we get too much further, we're going to kind of help orient yourselves on where we're actually at. So right behind Captain Jen and Chuck, you can actually see the blue flag flying on top of Mote. So we left from City Island. That is where Mote Marine Lab and Aquarium is located.
We are so
Then
creative.
over at 3 o'clock, where that big gigantic White House is at, that sits on St. Armand's Key. So that is where the circle's at. I'm sure you guys have spent some time in the restaurants and in the shops there as well. And if you guys were lucky enough, you guys got to avoid all of the lovely season traffic here. But if you guys were here for a long time, then you guys got to enjoy it just like the rest of us. Now, right at about 1, 2 o'clock, where that really tall building is located, those white condominiums, that is set upon Coon Key. So it's just named Coon Key because of the large population of raccoons that were found living on that island when early settlers made their way over to explore our barrier islands over on our west-hand side. Now leads us to our little causeway. And then, are we going under a little bridge today, Jen, or big bridge? Jen wants to keep you guys shaded today. So then we'll get a good look at Bird Key, and then we're going to go underneath the big John Rangley Causeway right over here at about 10 o'clock. That leads to our beautiful downtown Sarasota. Now, if you guys didn't come from Anna Maria Island or Longboat Key, more than likely that is the way that you guys came over to see us today. Yeah, absolutely. Anytime we're moving forward, you guys can walk around and make this your boat.
You can move around if you want. Wait.
Now, as we go around our trip today, let you guys look at the water. Anytime you see really lighter areas, what do you guys think that kind of habitat is going to be? Those will be our shallower areas or our sandbars more than likely. Now, all these darker patches that we see all throughout our bay, what do you guys think those are? Seagrass, yes, our seagrass. So those are going to be our grass bed or our grass bud, absolutely. So our seagrass beds are a very important, vital part of our ecosystem here. So they do provide a great nursery ground as well as a great protective habitat for a lot of juvenile fish and juvenile marine invertebrates. We have a good amount in our aquarium, which we'll talk about at the end of our trip. So anywhere between 70 to 80% of all our coastal fish species start their life in an estuary system, just like our bay we have right here. Now, when I say estuary, what do I mean? What's the definition of an estuary? Mixture of fresh and salt water, absolutely. So we are highly influenced saltwater-wise from the Gulf of Mexico. We'll be able to point out the largest opening or the largest pass on down shortly. But we still get some freshwater influence from the Manatee River located up north. Pretty big river system, as well as smaller rivers and tributaries the further south we head down. Now we get a great deal of salt water from the Gulf of Mexico to the point where we're almost at the exact same saltiness as the open ocean here in the bay. Now since we can see our seagrass beds, all the big darker patches pretty well all throughout, how deep do you guys think our bay is on average? And remember, our bay is 56 miles long.
30 feet.
30 feet? 7 feet? To Sarasota, including as animals, and would winter here in Sarasota every year. He was actually one of the first people to actually build the bridges to reach our barrier islands over here on our west-hand side. Now this bridge is still relatively new. It's only about 15 years old. It was built in 2003. It used to be a drawbridge before this. So keep you guys' eyes peeled at 1 o'clock. I have seen some dolphins start to surface. There they are. Feel free to go ahead and stand up as well, folks. Hey Jen, can you?
Oh, I see them.
Doesn't sound
Right out here. Right here.
okay. No, so I didn't know if you guys could hear me. Can you guys hear me okay? If I can? Okay.
You see them. Yep.
It sounds very quiet.
Well, we're still starting out.
What was that?
You'll have fun. $52, you better.
Now, since I've been here, we've kind of learned if we want to get our dolphins a little bit closer, we can actually dangle one of the smaller children overboard.
Oh, I'm for that. Let's do it.
There we go. There we go.
I've learned hot dogs work too.
That's not even funny.
It's funny to me. It happened to me. He'll pop up. I've got him on film too.
Alright guys, so for our dolphins,
There he is.
About 160 individual Atlantic bottlenose dolphins that reside here in our bay.
Yeah,
They're kind of
boobs.
created their own little niche here. They don't ever leave, they don't migrate. Again, they have a good food supply here in the bay. They eat a ton of pinfish and a ton of mullet. So they are able to increase their blubber layer quite substantially, so where they can withstand the colder temperatures here during the winter. Unlike our Florida manatees, when the water temperatures drop below dolphins are doing just fine.
I didn't get it.
Now, these guys are studied through the Sarasota Bay Dolphin Research Program, which is a part of Mote. They also get a lot of help from the Chicago Zoological Society as well. So they've been studying this group of dolphins since 1970. It makes them one of the continuous most longest studied group of dolphins in the whole entire world. So a lot is known about them. They do a lot of surveying every year, all throughout the year. Probably starting now. They've been going out so they can actually take different measurements of our dolphins, tissue samples, blood samples, just make sure they're doing okay. I see most of you guys learned the trick. Definitely keep your phone in video mode, unless you guys want some pretty good water pictures. Now, you always want to make sure, if you can, kind of get pictures of their dorsal fins, because that's how scientists can actually ID individual dolphins. So each dolphin has certain nicks and notches along their dorsal fins, so there's no need for us to put a physical tag on a dolphin. So that is how we are able to distinguish between two different dolphins. So no two dorsal fins are the same, so they act just like our thumbprints.
See, you got to see dolphins. What?
Not up close and personal the way the Canadian.
You'll see them at the aquarium up close and personal.
On our left-hand side, we do have downtown Sarasota. You guys are looking at a very popular marina and Marina Jack. So that's where our sister company, Labarge, is based out of. Hopefully we'll see them out here today. We'll be able to spot that out later. Now if you guys look about 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock, where that big tall building is with the spires on top, the red orange roof. That is the Ridge Farm Fence. That is the tallest building in Sarasota. It's right at 23 stories tall. But keep in mind those spires are right at about 11 feet tall as well. If you look over on the right, you can see that tall building in the foreground. In the background, that is called Plymouth Harbor. So that is a retirement community as well as a assisted living community as well. It is a extremely beautiful place. That is also the tallest building in Sarasota. It is exactly 23 stories. But the Ridge Farm Fence is exactly 11 feet taller than Plymouth Harbor because of the height. Now those two will always be the tallest buildings in their respectable ways. Sarasota has an ordinance where no other building can be taller than 23 stories. That is just for safety.
Oh great, we got ACDC.
But again, there was a lot of advertising construction in this area, especially when they go bird feed. Scientists actually figured out that they found bird feed on top of the water. Continuous seagrass bed up all the Sarasota Bay. So like I said earlier, that's a good area for a lot of big cats to now raise the birds to grow up. So that is going to keep the food supply for our larger fish as well as our larger mammals.
Of course the rich came in and ruined it.
They have less ways to find their food. Not only did they take away a good amount of their food supply, the seawall that you guys are looking at now is not always there. So you should just be the one to see that sand sediment. So all of our boat bays, all of our finger bays, all of our fish salts up in here, and all of that will be being raised just stretch along the coast all year round, all day. So it feels like you're walking on powdered sugar. And then if you guys look to your right, you guys can see Chuck's house that's getting built. I promise I'll show you. So that will be the largest house.
Oh, the beach is, the beach is, no, the beach is, you know, Siesta over here?
Yeah.
It's not sand, it's quartz. We find quartz. Yeah, that's why it's also very cool all the time. I actually didn't know that. We should bring Miko here sometime.
No, not.
Oh, she would love the ocean.
Since we talked about our beaches, what is one animal that utilizes our beaches every single year?
Seagulls?
During this time?
Seagulls?
Turtles, yeah. So it is sea turtle nesting. Looks like we got some more dolphins here as well. So this canal is a very good area that we can usually see our dolphins.
More dolphins. I'll say more
There's a
manatees.
particular group that likes to hang out here. They really love to use the seawall to their advantage, especially for feeding. They can actually chase their fish at high speeds directly at the seawall, kind of ram them into it, give them easy meal. They can chase them along down the seawall and kind of trap them on a corner. Oh, there they are.
Oh, there they are.
In the middle. So keep your eyes peeled
Right over there.
by the slow speed sign. There they are.
There they are.
Now you guys are keeping track, right? We're going to see if we can squeeze all 160 in. Now other feeding strategies that can physically use their fluke or their tail to slap the fish out of the water. Kind of stun them or in the water as well.
Dolphin slaps?
Exactly. They also have about 80 to 100 shaped conical teeth in their mouth. They only use their teeth to grab onto the fish. They don't chew their food. They swallow it whole. But if they're in a very playful mood, as they usually are, they can actually come out of the water, they'll throw their fish, chase it around again, catch it, and then throw it again. So they like to play with their food.
I can't see if it's common or bottlenose.
They are. They're bottlenose. That's, I think, what we're going to be seeing mostly.
Right by the sides.
See, that would be cool, living near where there's some dolphins. Never get you out of the water.
Now, a good thing to remember about our dolphins, as well as our manatees, they are protected under the Marine Mammal Protection Act. So you do have to keep a certain distance away from our mammals here, which is right about 50 yards. But since they are wild animals, it's kind of hard to predict where they're going to pop up. So if they do encroach that distance, we're going to do just what Captain Jen is doing right now. Sit in idle speed or turn off your engines, kind of just sit dead in the water, because it is illegal to harass our dolphins and our manatees.
And yet people do it anyway.
You can actually get a very hefty fine and upwards to $100,000, or you can even get jail time.
It's a nice
There's
house.
actually a guy in the Florida Keys
Just never want to clean it.
who was messing with our manatees, and he is now in jail.
Good. Was that the one that was passing around the manatees?
If you want to see one jumping out, if we don't get to see one jumping out, I promise you Chuck will put on his costume and then jump in the water and free for you guys. It's going to be a win-win for it.
I'd wait around for that.
Yeah, I know. That'd be worth it.
Just have to go back Chuck to do it. He can't say no to you.
There's about 3 of them.
They probably live in there. There's like 100 and
Maybe if
something.
they're in a very playful mood a little bit, we could see them jump out. They're very, very soaked in.
You've got a couple-hour wait before the next boat. I don't have a particularly loud voice, so if somebody can't hear me, just wave your hand and I'll try to amp up a little bit. And if anybody's concerned about a lengthy walk, you've just done about a quarter of it, so it's not terribly taxing. This is Big Edwards Island. It and the surrounding group of islands are part of the Sarasota County Park System. They're open to the public to come out and visit and explore and fish. They are, however, not available for overnight camping, and campfires are also illegal, though you'll see plenty of evidence where that gets overlooked. These islands are named after Arthur Edwards. We've remembered Mr. Edwards in this manner because he was one of the first mayors of Sarasota. But more importantly, he was one of the first conservationists in the area, who supported the idea of using public dollars to buy a private land with the idea of preserving it for future generations, which in the early 1900s was pretty forward-thinking. What's particularly interesting about these islands is that they're a combination of naturally occurring islands, like that red mangrove island behind the boat, and man-made islands, like the one that you're standing on. If you were standing in this spot in 1960, you'd be very wet, because this island wasn't here. As you've already learned, Sarasota Bay is a very shallow body of water, on average only about 5 feet in depth. And because it was so shallow, it wasn't navigable. If you wanted to move goods, if you wanted to move people, unless you had a small flat-bottom boat, it didn't happen. So the decision was made in the 1960s to dredge a channel, the entire 56-mile length of Sarasota Bay, plus a lot of side channels. And those channels are now part of the Intracoastal Waterway System, which is a system of protected waterways that extends from New England, down along the Atlantic seaboard, across Florida Lake Okeechobee, into the Gulf, over to South Texas. It's 3,000 miles of protected waterway, where you can go from one end to the other and only have to go out into the ocean in 2 places. So it really is this amazing waterway. And Sarasota Bay is part of that system. When they dredged it up, when they brought up the sand and the silt, the material you're standing on, collectively we refer to this as spoil. It had to go somewhere. They could have trucked it away, they could put it along the shoreline. It was a whole lot easier just to form these islands. And that's what they did. And you will find spoil islands the entire length of Sarasota Bay. You'll find spoil islands the entire length of the Intercoastal Waterway, because that's the process and the practice that they followed the entire development of the Intercoastal. The sand and the silt that you see here initially was just a big mound of material. There was no vegetation out here. Most of the vegetation you see here is naturally occurring, air and waterborne seed that just happened on the island. It germinated, it grew, it spread. But initially there was nothing. And that was a problem because every time it rained, a good portion of the island would wash right back in the bay and then have to dredge it again. So the decision was made to bring in a type of vegetation that was believed would stabilize the islands, hold them together until naturally occurring vegetation came about. And what they decided to use was something called an Australian pine. The tall trees right here. The tallest trees in all these islands are all Australian pines. As the name implies, it's not a native species. It comes from the Australia-New Zealand area. But they've been used in Florida since the early 1900s as a shade tree, as a wind block. And what they liked about it is that they grow very rapidly and they have an extensive root system. It was believed those roots would hold the island together. However, there's always a however. On these islands, those roots grow down about a foot, they encounter salt water. They don't like salt water and they stop growing. So we end up with a very tall tree and a very shallow root system. And as you can imagine, when it gets windy out here, these trees topple right over. Matter of fact, we're going to have to step across one a little bit further down the path. But the bigger problem with the Australian pine, you can see by looking underneath it. Nothing else is growing. The needle-like branchlets fall to the ground and they make the soil moderately toxic. So native vegetation will grow. It's displaced native vegetation, so it's considered an invasive species. In fact, in Florida, it's a Category 1 invasive species, which means it's illegal to own for the purpose of sale or cultivation. Now, we have another exotic, meaning non-native invasive species on the island I'd like to introduce you to. It's a little bit further down the path. We do have to cross over this Australian pine this fall, so please be careful. I want you to be sure you go back to the boat with the same number of toes you got off with. So you ready to go? Let's go.
Another example. Do something.
It's all right. I love the smell of seawater. That's gonna be fun.
Good place for it. Yep. I think that is a stone trap block. Maybe somebody had it out here for a snack. If you look at the base of the tree that we stepped over, you can see some of the root system. And you're going to have to take this on faith, but that little bit of land there went out another 20 or 30 feet. That tree toppled over, the roots broke up the soil and actually made it more vulnerable to erosion than it would have been otherwise. The next couple of rainstorms it just washed right out. Okay. I'd like to point out to the sign behind me, it says that these islands have been adopted by the Sarasota County chapter of the Parrotheads. Do you know who the Parrotheads are?
Buffett fans.
Yes. For those of you who don't, there is a relatively well-known singer by the name of Jimmy Buffett, and he has an organized fan club worldwide, and they call themselves the Parrotheads. Well, they've adopted these islands. And what that means in practical terms is they come out here 2 or 3 times a year, and I suspect they party a little bit. I suspect they party a lot, but they come out with a lot of empty garbage bags and they leave a lot of full garbage bags. Anything that's been left here by visitors or washed up on shore, they remove. They keep these islands pristine. So we like to recognize them for that. Behind that sign is a sable palm. That's native vegetation. It belongs here. But just behind to the left of it is this tall, straggly, leafy, not terribly spectacular looking tree that has a marvelous history. It's called a Brazilian pepper tree. It was introduced to Florida in the mid-1800s as a decorative tree. People brought it here to decorate their homes during the holiday season. Doesn't look very decorative, but if you were here in November and December, that tree is covered with beautiful red berries. It looks a lot like holly, which doesn't flourish in Florida. However, again, there's always a however. The tree grows rapidly, it spreads rapidly, and it grows very densely. Where it's growing, native vegetation is often displaced. It's another invasive species. It spreads rapidly because birds love those berries. They eat the berries, they digest the flesh of the berry, the seed passes through and is deposited on the ground with their guano, so it hits the ground pre-fertilized and just takes off. Current estimates are somewhere in the neighborhood of 700,000 acres of Florida are covered by Brazilian pepper tree. And where it's growing, native vegetation is displaced. The state of Florida has been trying now for many years to find an ecologically sound way of removing these trees. And so far we've been unsuccessful. Typically with an invasive species like that, what you do is you cut it down, you put it in a big pile and burn it. Simple. But you can't do that with a pepper tree because it's poisonous. It's related to poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac. If you have any kind of skin sensitivity, if you touch those leaves, you'd get a contact rash. But more importantly, if you burn it, the smoke that it gives off is highly toxic, so you can't burn it. So we have yet to find a sound way of getting rid of it. Now, one little side note about the birds and the berries. Often those berries sit on the ground for an extended period before the birds get to them, and they ferment.
Oh, drunk birds.
When we see birds flying erratically during the holiday season, they're intoxicated. They've gotten the Brazilian pepper tree. And the sad irony is it never took off as a holiday decoration because essentially would you put poison ivy on your holiday table. Okay, I've introduced you to two of the exotic invasive species that are out here. We're going to turn back to the boat and make one more brief stop, and I'd like to talk to you about a type of vegetation that's out here that's absolutely essential for the health of the bay. So again, please be careful crossing over that Australian pine.
Good job.
This is as far as we're going.
Oh, right here?
Yep.
Mangroves? Yep.
Yep. The vegetation prevents a lot of it. On the boat, Ryan talked about the seagrasses and how absolutely essential they are for the health of the bay. They provide nursery habitat, they provide food for our manatees, they provide us a tremendous CO2 sink. A lot of that nice clean oxygen that we're breathing in right now is from the seagrasses. The other type of vegetation that's absolutely essential for the health of the bay is this fellow right here. You know what that is?
Mangrove?
Absolutely. I had a little girl look at it the other day like I had two hits. She said, "It's a tree."
Oh, mangrove.
It's a mangrove tree. Mangroves are essential for the health of the bay for a whole host of reasons. One is they do stabilize the islands. This is naturally occurring, but you can see this tremendous root system out here. That mitigates a lot of wave action. It slows down a lot of naturally occurring erosion. The red mangrove trees, in fact, the red mangrove island behind our boat will grow measurably from year to year. The roots grow out, sand and silt collects around the roots. The following year the roots will grow out further. While this island will erode a little bit year after year after year, though the roots slow that down quite a bit. Mangroves filter the water. They remove a lot of pollutants from the water. And they provide habitat. Very soon after we get back on the boat, you're going to see what I think is a pretty dramatic example of how red mangrove provide nursery habitat for a lot of our seabirds. But the roots also provide habitat for a lot of our marine life. A lot of those fish that are born in among the seagrasses, they'll spend the first couple years of their life in among mangrove roots until they're mature enough to head out on their own. Worldwide, we have about 24 species of mangrove. In Florida, we have 3. They are the white mangrove, the black mangrove, and the red mangrove. This is oak black mangrove. They live right along the shoreline, and it's characterized by these finger-like roots you see sticking up. They're called snorkel roots. Anybody know what a snorkel is? That tube that divers wear to get oxygen? Well, all vegetation needs oxygen to promote cell metabolism. Most vegetation gets it from the available oxygen in the soil. It comes in through the roots. However, this tree's roots are in either very, very dense mud or water where there's no available oxygen. So in order to get it, they stick up their snorkels. And on those snorkel roots, there are little pores called lenticles, and they'll draw oxygen through those pores. The red mangrove tree is also characterized by its roots. If you look very carefully at the red mangrove tree, you'll notice the trunk of the tree seldom sits in soil. It sits propped up on a mass of roots, and they are in fact referred to as prop roots. They look a bit like legs. And the earliest inhabitants of Florida used to refer to mangroves as walking trees, because they got the impression these trees were walking across the water. Last comment about mangroves. First of all, is anybody here a gardener?
He is.
Well, you can admit to it. It's okay. If you watered your plants with salt water, what would happen?
Who knows?
Oh, I know. They die. The salt pulls moisture out of the cells collapse, the vegetation dies for almost any tree. Yet this tree's roots are in salt water. And the way that it's able to survive is twofold. One is there's a substance in the root that prevents the absorption of about 95 to 98% of the salt. Never gets in the tree. However, that other 5% that gets in the tree, if it's not eliminated, it will concentrate and eventually kill the tree. So these trees have a mechanism of removing the salt. In the case of the black mangrove, it's through the leaf. The salt will come out through pores in the leaf. Huh? Absolutely. Now, the reason there's no leaves right here is we've been in the habit of plucking them off and passing them around because you can actually see a layer of salt crystals on top of the leaf. I used to take it a step further and suggest people take a lick. It wasn't a good idea because they'd go running back to the boat to get water. It's such a high concentration of salt. The red mangrove has a somewhat different mechanism. Essentially what it does is it sends the salt to the oldest leaves on the tree. Those leaves will turn yellow and then fall off the tree. So when you look at our red mangrove tree, look at them carefully and you'll see interspersed throughout the green, you'll see some yellow leaves. Well, those are the older leaves where the salt is accumulated. Now, my last comment, I've introduced you to exotic, non-native, invasive species, and they're both vegetation. I just want you to understand that an invasive species can also be an animal. And we do have an animal invasive species in the area that we are concerned about.
Lionfish?
Absolutely. They haven't gotten in the bay yet, but we suspect they will in the next 8 to 10 years, and it is the lionfish. Now, I don't know if you've seen one. If you get in the aquarium, check them out. We have some in the aquarium. They are beautiful, beautiful fish.
And tasty.
They just don't belong here, okay? They have no natural predators. They reproduce very, very rapidly, and they are voracious eaters. Whoever they are, they're displacing native species. The reason I mention this is, just as this young lady pointed out, they are tasty. And Mote's been trying to promote a commercial fishery for lionfish. And the only way to promote a commercial fishery is to promote an interest in eating them. So I'm here to agree and say, they're tasty.
They are.
And if you happen to come across one on a local menu, many of our restaurants will have it on occasion. No one has it all the time. Whole Foods, though, downtown Sarasota has it in their fish market all the time. If you like fish, I would strongly suggest giving it a try. It's a tasty fish, you have a nice meal, and you help our environment, so it's a win-win situation. It doesn't get any better than that.
Do we know how they even got here?
We do. In the late 60s, early 70s, there was an aquarium supply facility in the Miami area that washed out to sea with one of the hurricanes. And with it, several hundred individual fish. And they are now throughout the Caribbean, they're throughout the Gulf, they're as far north as Long Island, New York.
Wow.
Out to Bermuda, and they found some in the Mediterranean last year that they're not sure from that same release, but they believe they are. So they are just taking off.
They're enjoying themselves.
Yeah. If there aren't any questions, let's head back to the boat and go see our bird rookery. You find some lizards?
Finally, marine science courses come in handy. I'm trying to get a good shot of the seagulls.
Oh, ya va.
Alright, so right off the bat. Alright, Jen, I saw this the other day. This bird right here, are those just tricolor herring babies? Okay, because I saw the Lego reddish tent and I didn't know what they were. That's awesome. And then the top ones on the top, you see the baby pelicans? Yeah. So these white birds directly across the two clock, those are called great egrets. That is Sarasota snow. All the white stuff that are in the trees itself, that is, like I just said, Sarasota snow. It's the only white stuff we get here. But it's also known as bird food. So it does act as a really good natural fertilizer for our mangroves as well. We have a beautiful cattle egret right here out near the water's edge right here. The bird in the water is called a double-crested cormorant. They are a big diving bird species. Some parts of the world they can dive down to about 100 feet. But here, since it is only on average 5 feet, they can be pretty lazy. You can see the baby pelicans, they kind of have their little throats vibrating. Does anybody know why they do that? So they're actually, it's almost the equivalent of a dog panting, so that's how they get rid of their excessive heat. Now our great egrets, they almost went extinct many years ago. Does anybody know why?
Hunting?
Yeah, so they were hunted for their feathers or their plumage, and then those feathers were used for women's hats. We have like a whole group family of roseate spoonbills directly ahead of us. There's about 8 of them, directly straight ahead of us.
You're kidding. No, how do you get those roseate
Perfect timing.
coming right down to the water?
A lot of juveniles.
Oh, look, beautiful.
So, those are a lot of juveniles. So the way you can tell the difference is, if you see roseates with light pink coloration, they still have feathers or plumes on their head, those are the juveniles. But if we see one that's a darker pink coloration, like we saw the one on the corner as we came in, and it's bald, that are the adults. That is the most roseates I've ever seen here. Now they are naturally pink, so they don't have to solely rely on a very rich shrimp diet to get their pink coloration like our flamingos.
There's some jumping fish over there.
Yeah, those could be your mullet.
What? Motes are like, ha ha, can't get me.
Now, the National Audubon Society has done a lot of conservation as well as surveying efforts in this recreation. They've counted anywhere from 14 to 15 different species of birds they can find here. But they've also counted anywhere from 600 to 650 different mating pairs of birds that come to this bird recreation every single year. They come here in such great numbers, so they are known as colonial nesters. They're just like a big giant neighborhood watch almost. But they come to these exact same 3 red mangrove islands because there's little to almost zero predation they have to worry about. As well as you can imagine these along the mainland, just right behind us. Got feral cats, raccoons, get us another good pass by of our rosettes as well as all of our other babies. Now our brown pelicans, they have 3 main life stages. So when they're first born, they're going to be just like the ones we're seeing that kind of vibrate in their throats. So they're going to be mostly all white. These guys are probably a little over 3 weeks now. So they're already starting to kind of get their brown plumage. So a little bit later after they're born, we'll have that brown plumage. So they'll have a brown forehead, brown neck, but they still have that white belly. So if you see those, you know you're seeing a juvenile, and they're more likely to. Now for the adults, just like all the ones on the corner, white forehead, brown neck, dark brown to grayish belly. Now, if you see some of that exact coloration, but maybe they have a yellow forehead or yellow tint to their forehead, that is the mating plumage of our pelicans. All blue, it'll be a little blue. See the white belly? You gotta do something tricolor.